Hello and welcome to GEOSCOPE on Politics Social. And special guest tonight, because Ollie can't make it, is Mike Dix of Trumpton fame, the mayor of Trumpton himself. How you doing, Mike?
I'm all right. Thank you very much, Graham.
Yeah. This is quite an enthusiastic intro, that, wasn't it? Someone was
It was
asking,
really, I don't know what to say.
where's the bowler hat, man? But you don't have a bowler hat. Do you have a mayor's hat, since you're the mayor of
I have
Trumpton?
Ollie. I have Ollie to thank for my introduction to you guys. So
Yeah,
it's a shame he's not here. But I
it
do have
is.
a mayor's hat.
Look at this. It's beautiful.
How's that?
That is
I'm not sure I'll
fantastic.
wear it all the way through, but it is a proper
Yeah,
mayor's hat.
yeah, that is excellent. It looks like a seafarer's hat.
I think mayors are basically pirates.
Oh, that makes sense.
They wear pirate uniforms. So
Fair enough. Right, we're going to say a big hello to everyone in the chat. Not everyone, but most of them. We've got Audrey White in there. We've got Puninator. We've got David Huardo. We've got Duke Vengeance in the chat. We've got Richard Grumpy Git. We've got Diz in there as well. Billy Kershaw. So, if you would like to join them,
we got Jan Wallace. Bonjour.
Oh, hello, Jan. Bonjour.
Bonsoir.
Oh, okay, so if you want to hit that lovely, juicy subscribe button and join and wait for 30 seconds, you can join the chat. But don't be a troll, because we'll get rid of you. So, should we get into it? There's a load to talk about today. I don't know if we're going to get through it all in an hour. It's been a bit mad. So, Trump has, this afternoon, we weren't going to talk about Trump. That's how mad this was. I was planning to talk about anything but Trump. And yet, he's put the tariffs up on Mexico and Canada to 50%.
Has he? Will he? I mean, it's
and
midnight
tonight. Oh, it might not be Mexico.
Classic,
I think it's just Canada.
It's classic, just Canada, because it's what Carney said to him yesterday. But, he'll probably pull him off by 1 o'clock in the morning.
Well, who's going to pull who off? What?
Trump. Well, I probably should rephrase that.
Yeah, you probably should.
Carney is going to pull off Carney by 1 o'clock in the morning, and that'll be the news in the morning.
They're going to pull
we might as well. Nowadays, we might as well just make it up as we go along anyway. Nothing is shocking, really.
Well, Ontario under Doug Ford is hitting back a 25% surcharge on US bound electricity, with a possibility of a total cutoff. And Trump has said, on top of the fee that the Canadians are levying, they're also going to put American tariffs on it as well, which is going to raise the average price for your average American who gets Canadian power by at least $100 a month.
But I read today that Trump said that he was going to declare a state of emergency over the electricity supply.
Oh, that was
and I was thinking,
yes. National emergency.
Which intelligent political commentator do I know that was predicting back last year that Trump will just declare a state of emergency at some point?
So he could do what the fuck he likes. I don't know.
Supreme powers under Article 1.
It might have been a supremely handsome gobby ginger kind of scouse twat.
Incredibly handsome scouse twat. Yeah, that was the guy. That was him.
His name escapes me. Anyway, Tim Ballum, whose name does not escape me because he's given us £5 super chat. Thank you, the very first super chat of the evening. Thank you, Tim. It's very kind of you. You hear about the allegations that Tesla committed fraud in Canada, claiming massive amounts of EV rebates. This is the story about them selling 7,000 Teslas in an afternoon.
Does he?
Good business. It was like 3 dealerships.
Does he have any businesses that are not subsidized by the state?
No,
none.
No.
And the guy yesterday was being interviewed about. He was talking about hacking social security payments.
Yes,
that the poor need to get used to not having money.
Yeah, because he needs. It's not enough for him to be rich. Everyone else has to be poor and miserable.
Unbelievable.
As miserable as he. As miserable as he is.
Did you? I was just watching a clip of the Mardi Gras in Louisiana, and the guards on the parade were given Teslas to drive around in, and everybody, it must be a Musk publicity stunt, and everybody was, the beads that they have to fling at people, to throw at people. They were slinging these steel beads at the windows and breaking them and booing. And there's an interview with one of the guys that was a guard, and he's going, at first I thought it was exciting that I got a truck. Normally I have to sort of police this on foot.
Yeah.
And he said, and then we locked ourselves in the truck and tried to find an escape route from the crowd, basically.
Yeah, it's not going down so well. There's been a lot of incidents of Tesla dealerships being attacked in America, in Canada, in France. And in response to this, Trump has said that he'll buy a Tesla. This is what he said today about Tesla stock going down 15% in a day. He was like, "I'll buy a Tesla," which is, oh my god, it's like someone's house has burned down, and you go like, "I've got a towel."
Do you want that sofa anymore? I'll have that. Yeah,
It's like not much use without the house, but never mind. Alex in the chat is asking, "Am I not watching Liverpool go through to the Champions Quarter League final against?" Champions League quarter final tonight. No, I'm an Everton fan, so I don't get to watch Champions League games because we never qualify.
I'm just completely phased out. Are you talking about sport?
We're talking about round ball.
Oh, right, the soccer ball thing. Yeah, I like that. It's nice.
Yeah, it is.
I understand
it's a beautiful game, apparently.
They're building a what do they call them?
Stadium.
A court, a football court.
They're building a football court in Manchester that looks like a Bedouin tent. I think what they did was it was one of the leftover designs from the Saudi Arabian and/or Qatar World Cup, and they went, "Let's put this in the middle of Manchester because it's very, it speaks to Manchester." If I had to design that, it would speak to the dark satanic mills, the cotton mills, for which Manchester is famous. Yeah. The bee is the symbol of Manchester because that pollinated all the cotton.
You imagine some enormous chimneys like the 2012
I'd
Olympics.
Make it look like Battersea Power
Station. And the rest
Station
of the chimney is light.
Yeah.
Just like beams of light going up into space.
It would look a little bit of homage to Battersea Power Station kind of look, because
it's supposed to look like the Trident. British. Isn't it? It's supposed to look like the Trident
like
in the Yeah.
It looks like a Bedouin tent. It's fine.
Gary Neville is
multiculturalism.
Gary Neville is not the best Manchester voice to do the voiceover for the video either. It's like, we're going to build a stadium. It's going to be great.
It's going to be great. It's going to be so much fun. So exciting. Yeah. So Manchester United are getting a new sports court, which is nice. It's going to hold 100,000 people, and then we can fill it with water and sharks. Only joking, Manchester. Don't at me.
Going back to sport though, Carney, I thought were great. A lot of people questioning whether he's a politician rather than a bureaucrat. I thought the line, as in ice hockey, we will beat you in a war, basically. Perfect. It
was really good. It does. Got a question for you. How long does it take a Mancunian to have a shit?
I mean, this is a subject close to my heart. I don't know, Graham.
9 months, unless it's premature. Sold. Sorry, old Liverpool-Manchester rivalry. Don't at me. We need to get
Lancastrians that I know. Yeah. Give you a bit of pushback.
Yes, sorry, I'm only joking. It was just a joke. Just a joke.
I know some very nice people from Lancashire. I'm just saying.
Do you know all two of them?
Definitely one. I definitely know one.
Actually, before 1973 or whenever it was, when they changed the boundaries, Liverpool was part of Lancaster.
No,
Lancashire, even. And if you die in Liverpool without a will, your money goes to
the Duchy of Lancaster.
The Duchy of Lancaster, which is the king. That's nice,
nice,
isn't it?
That's nice because
don't die without a will or dependent.
He's got to keep up those houses and things, doesn't he?
You've got to keep all those mansions that they don't let us in. Chris C says Tesla filed for $46 million in rebates, $46 million in rebates in the last 3 days of the scheme in Canada. So this is an EV rebate scheme that was coming to an end last month, and it was January, and just before it did, they sold a record number of Teslas. I mean, they're not even trying to hide the corruption. It's just pure corruption all the way down, isn't it?
And I almost guarantee you this, that I bet the dealerships are not run by Tesla. I bet they're franchises.
Yeah.
And I bet whoever owns the franchise of those Teslas was forced into buying 7,000 Teslas.
Yes.
And he's sitting on them as stock now with pocketing the rebates, basically. But he's now got useless stock that nobody in Canada will want to buy ever, basically.
Yeah.
So.
Well, we're getting breaking news, which I haven't seen yet because someone's probably listened to the radio. But was it Warren? Who was it who said breaking news? Warren, peace. Oh, we'll see what you've done there, Warren. It's very good. Breaking news, the US have agreed to resume intelligence and security assets to Ukraine following the meeting in Saudi. Oh, yes. So sorry, that is actually on CNN. It's not on the BBC yet.
Yeah, Ukraine have come away, I think, with an agreement from America at least to an air and sea ceasefire for 30 days.
Yeah.
A friend of mine from Ukraine, I know you've got friends in Ukraine, has been texting me saying, maybe Trump will notice what we've noticed since 2014 is that you agree a ceasefire and people die in Russian hands during the ceasefire.
Yes.
And I said to her, the only thing we can do is just, let's call them Trump's deaths, basically.
Yeah.
They're all on his hands.
Well, we're calling it the Trump session, aren't we, instead of the recession, giving it his name, because it's all his fault, literally all his fault. So, the US economy has tanked. It's going down again today. The stock market has nosedived, the recession fears. And in comparison, Europe's doing all right. It went down a bit today, but...
There's so many. There's a whole clip montage from one of the YouTube channels I watch where they've got every instance that Trump during his last presidency cited the stock market as being the biggest indicator of his success.
Yes.
50, 60 clips of him saying it.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden he's saying, no, it's Biden's fault, the economy's tanking.
Nothing to do with me.
You shouldn't even look at the stock market as an indicator of success.
Warren Peace says, to be fair, Trump would struggle to outsmart yeast. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Ernie says, it's called phenonexia, the greed that needs not just more, but everyone else has less. Is that actually a word for it? That's crazy, isn't
it? I'm impressed with your Greek, I assume, pronunciation. I would have called that pleonexia, but...
I might have pronounced it wrong. I have no idea.
I'm
not necessarily...
Well, just take the credit that PLE obviously is pronounced with an F, basically, because it could well be. I'm trying to brush up on my Spanish for a Spanish. My son's getting married in Valencia in
cool.
A few weeks' time.
I love Spanish because it's bloody phonetic, and having to grow up all my life learning French and English, two distinctively not phonetic languages who just have their own rules for every other word. I really like the fact it's phonetic, and I also like the fact that a rolling R is part of their language. So if it's pero, meaning but, as in I'm going to go there, but I'm going somewhere else, it's got one R, and it's just a pero, it's just a normal R. But if you put two R's in it, pero, and you roll it with your tongue, that means dog, and I really like that.
But I still can't even get past the fact that they pronounce J as an H, and when they write laughing, it's jar 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 jar. Basically.
Well, I like all the words that are like English. They just have like an I on the end or something, or an E or something, or an A.
That's pretty much how I get by.
Yeah,
in Spain.
Just say the English word and put an A on the end. Also, if it ends in ITY, it generally ends in idad in Spanish. So like Theodad, Universidad, anything that would end in English in ITY.
Oh, there you go.
It ends in idad.
I just got a text message. I am constantly getting this wrong. I am not going to a wedding in Valencia. I'm going to a wedding in Seville.
Oh,
and I have to keep checking the flight
of Seville
and the Airbnb that I've booked because I keep describing it as Valencia or Valencia, and no, it's actually in Seville. I'm going mad in my old age. Well, I hope I don't turn up in entirely the wrong city.
Well,
where's the wedding?
Well, so I was at a party and a mate of mine said there's a music festival in Siberia. Do you want to go? And I went, fuck yeah, that sounds great. A music festival in Siberia. I'm definitely going there. And it wasn't until I sobered up the next morning that I realized we had booked a trip to Serbia because that's where the music festival was. It wasn't Siberia, but for the whole night, I was imagining us driving through the Russian tundra to this fucking music festival in the middle of a frozen lake or something.
Fighting off wolves.
Actually, Serbia. It was in Novi Sad in Serbia. But, it was a nice trip to Serbia, just not as far. But yeah, who else have we got in we've got person
Mikey Famine.
Oh, Mikey Famine's in the chat.
Got a haircut in Seville once.
Oh, wow.
Mikey.
That's very random. I like that. Person impersonator says,
it's a long way to go, though, when you think about it. I mean, Mikey, there must be reasonable places where you live in Ohio.
Yeah. Person impersonator saying, Graham, phonetic language comes from being respelled. It's something fascists tend to do. Oh, okay. That's put me off a little bit. But okay. English is very silly. I mean, if you have an O-U-G-H in a word, who knows how it's pronounced? Well, we do because it's terrible with the language. But if you're trying to learn
language. My grandson speaks Spanglish. He definitely speaks English, or he understands English because obviously my son's English. And my granddaughter, soon-to-be daughter-in-law, Rathio, always says to me, look, Mike, when you come, just speak English because I want him to hear other English voices. And I said, yeah, but I want to learn some Spanish. And she said, yeah, but your Spanish is shit, Mike.
Yeah.
Just really shit. And I don't want him to learn to speak Spanish the way you do.
Issue. So people just get frustrated with you and then they'll just speak English because your Spanish has to be better than their English.
Yeah.
Because
They take the mickey out of
we're trying to communicate.
my
That's the whole
son.
point.
As far as I can tell, my son speaks fluent Spanish. You know, he's just negotiated a mortgage in Spain, which means you have to go and see the mayor and the chief of police and the bank manager and all sorts of things.
Did you lend him your mayor's hat so he thought he was a fellow mayor and would see him as an equal?
No, I did have to get
mate, you missed the
birth certificate notarized by some medieval court in Brighton. Basically, there's a ridiculous system for doing international mortgages.
Oh, it was a Barber of Seville joke. Oh God, sorry, Mike. We didn't get you Barber of Seville joke anyway. But yeah, no, it is difficult. And to be fair, you know, if someone gives you a bit of attitude when you're trying to speak French and just mangling the language, or Italian or German or whatever, it's not their job to be a teacher to you. Do you know what I mean? Like, turn up and go, right, you got to teach me how to speak your language. It's like, no, go to school and freaking learn, you lazy English bastard. But, you know.
Make the effort, absolutely.
Make the effort. That's why, if you're going in somewhere to order something and they speak fluent English, why are you wasting their time trying to speak a language that you can barely speak? Although, I don't know if I told you this story, but a few years ago, me and Catherine went over to Italy for a few days, and we went to a little cafe, and I said two lattes, and we got 2 glasses of milk.
Of course.
I literally asked for 2 glasses of milk, and that's what they gave us. And I'm like, oh, latte macchiato or whatever it is, coffee.
As it turns out, the Starbucks didn't invent Spanish, Italian.
Yeah, who would have known? Who would have known? One Aggie Peg says, I found Norwegian relatively easy to learn because of the many cognates. Well, one Angry Pagan, I don't even know what the word cognate means, so
I have to look that up.
I have to look it up.
You know, Cozy from Politics Social.
Yeah,
she speaks multiple languages, and she was talking to me recently about one of the reasons that English people really struggle to learn is that certainly when I was at school, we weren't taught English as a language. We were never really sat down and go, okay, these are verbs and adverbs and adjectives. It's like one day you did that, and that was it. And you repeated a few, and then that was it. You don't do it like you learn Spanish or learn French, basically, where you're just looking at lists of nouns and adjectives for weeks and just going through all of that and then understand. So a lot of us enter into learning those languages not really understanding English grammar.
Yeah.
We don't really understand what all this stuff does. It's just inherent in us because it's our natural language.
Yeah.
So teaching grammar would just be a really key thing to do, I think, because then we'd understand how to work other languages and say, how does the grammar differ?
Yeah.
And then I can learn the words. Basically.
Teaching other languages at a very young age is also better because your brain is more receptive to other languages. When you're
Lucas, my grandson is 3, and he's got English.
You have a grandson. You don't look old enough. Were you a teenage pregnancy? Were you?
This may surprise you, but I was never pregnant. I had a wife doing all of that
kids
for
if
me.
You weren't pregnant? I don't understand. Guess someone get J.K. Rowling on the phone. Someone who's very funny made the point today that in J.K. Rowling's world, because she wants to monitor who goes in the toilet. J.K. Rowling wouldn't allow J.K. Rowling to use the women's toilet because she doesn't look feminine enough. Ironically, but there you go. Tim Ballum, thank you very much for the £5 super chat, sir. Being dyslexic, which is a very hard word to spell, which I think is cruel, you learn other ways to try and spell. Only problem is you occasionally pronounce words exactly how they are spelled by mistake. Yeah, true. But it's a lot easier now that you have spell checker, spell predict, little wiggly line under the words when you're typing them in to into Word or Google Docs or whatever. That really, really helps because sometimes I don't know the spelling of something, but I know that the shape of the word is wrong, so I can look at it and I know that it's wrong, but I don't know what the right way.
Have you ever seen those? Have you ever
Like
seen those texts where they write almost all the words wrong, but you can absolutely read it? You can
read it because the first and the last letters are right, and they just jumbled up the ones in the middle.
Yeah, we see words as a whole thing, not as a group of letters, basically.
My ex-girlfriend was dyslexic, and I could read what she wrote, and I'd show it to someone else, and they couldn't read it. But because I knew her, and I knew that the way she tried to spell stuff, it made sense to me. So once, sort of like, when everyone was just like text messaging each other with the old, you got to press 222 to get a C, and then you have to press like 555 to get an L or whatever. I could tell what she was trying to get through, so I was better at sort of cracking those codes. Because for a while, it was people used to talk in text speak because you got charged didn't you, by the letter, effectively?
Yeah.
So everything
Yeah,
had to be narrowed down to lol and rolling on the floor laughing and all that kind of stuff. Now it's a little bit
there you go.
easier. But that's why
Just a little
Twitter
bit.
started at 140 characters, wasn't it? Because that was a text message.
Do you know the story of text messaging?
It was to do with it was an afterthought, wasn't it? It was just to send messages to make sure that
It was
the
an
system was
engineering code. It was an
code.
engineering code so that you could triangulate the towers.
Yeah.
And then they all messaged each other. They invented a language to talk within the 140 characters they got, which were really designed just to give coordinates and readings off the meters. And then once it was kind of hacked, once phone users worked out that, hang on, these calls are costing me a fortune, but there's this messaging thing. What's that? The phone companies, because it was free. Text messages originally were free.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden they started charging because they realized, they suddenly realized, hang on a minute, this is costing us. And it wasn't costing them anything. That's the worst bit about it. They only charged because people used it.
And it used to be really annoying when you said text message someone and they responded with a question, and you're like, I've got to spend another 10p now explaining the bloody thing. But yeah, anyway, should we get back to what's been going on in the world?
We probably should.
Probably should. At some point. So we're just talking about Trump, and like, if there was ever a time for Europe to poach all the brightest and best scientists, artists, engineers, etc., from America, academics from America, now is the time. Poach them like motherfuckers. Go out there and say, listen, if you want to come over and live in Britain, or you want to live in France or Germany, we will put you up in a home. We'll give you a house, not a retirement home, obviously, and we'll give you a free visa for you and your family. Come over.
Yeah, 10-year visa or something like that.
Yeah, just get out.
But, I was listening to Peter Kyle on LBC yesterday, and I know Peter is one of my local MPs.
Oh, yeah, cool.
And I have to be absolutely honest, I was a bit disappointed in where they're heading with this, because
I hate him.
currently we are pushing for a trade deal with America on AI specifically. That's the big Starmer win, hopefully. And I just don't think we should, because, and I'll tell you, there's two reasons why at the moment that I'm suffering from, really. One is that I had 2 Microsoft web cameras, and Microsoft did an update to Windows 11, and their own cameras now don't work with Microsoft Windows 11. They've switched off the use of that, and I'm using an old Creative Labs one. And then Google did a software update overnight on my Google devices, the one that makes the telly work, the one that makes the speakers work. They're all switched off. They don't work. There's a global outage on these devices.
Yeah.
Right. And you just think, God, the power of these companies. So why on earth do we want to do a trade deal with America where Google, Grok maybe, and Meta end up in a situation where they've got their fingers in all of our AI, which means we're handing over the NHS data, the military data, our educational attainment, all of our personal records. We hand all that over to those companies, and they can switch it on or off whenever they want, like Musk is fucking about within Ukraine at the moment. You know what? Say thank you for my satellites, basically. And, that's one of the problems. We're not playing global politics. Sorry, Musk is just as powerful in Ukraine in a way as the CIA at the moment. He's able to say, I'm going to switch off all the Starlinks if you don't thank me and buy some cars or whatever it is.
Well, I've got a response from my MP today after I wrote to her about exactly what you're talking about Musk. I'll read a bit of it. She says, on the broader issues you've raised, such as Musk's ownership of X, Tesla, and Starlink, and his political influence, the government is actively monitoring the impact of foreign technology firms and their leaders on UK security and democracy. And then she refers to the Online Safety Act, which provides a framework to regulate platforms like X. Provides the framework, doesn't actually lay down the law, which he needs to do. Additionally, the Department of Science, Innovation and Technology is exploring the ways to safeguard critical infrastructure, including satellite systems like Starlink from potential misuse. We've got to get out of Starlink. We've got to get out.
Oh, yeah. We have a rocket launch pad in Scotland now. We should be putting our own satellites up in the air. We should be working with Europe to do that. We should be the ones in India poaching the best and brightest coders and mathematicians and scientists coming out of their universities. We should have a better relationship than that. All Google do is go over to India and collect up the best candidates they possibly can, give them a gold card or a green card, and ship them over to America and make them work almost as slaves. And effectively, we could do a lot better
Yeah,
by
we could.
developing AI here.
Yeah, get them over and develop the AI. So, news from the Philippines. Duterte, dirty Duterte, has been arrested. He's been taken to the Hague by the International Criminal Court arrest warrant for his crimes against humanity. This is a man who once bragged about throwing someone out of a helicopter. Because that's
did I read right?
Thug he is.
Did I hear this right? That his daughter has been the one commenting on this on the news bulletins.
Yes.
Is the vice president.
Yes.
That's just, I mean, if you wanted to go, hello, we're a dictatorship.
Well, do you know who the president is?
No.
So, have you heard of Imelda Marcos?
Yeah.
What do you know about Imelda Marcos?
Shoes.
Shoes. She
millions of
shoes.
millions
she
of
was
shoes.
married to the president of
the
Philippines, who famously chased the Beatles out of the Philippines because the Beatles didn't want to play a special concert for them in their presidential palace. Anyway, he's the current president is the son of Imelda and Juan, or whatever his husband's Ferdinand Marcos. Ferdinand. So Ferdinand and it's their son. So the current president is the son of the dictators in the 60s and 70s, and the vice president is the daughter of Dirty Duterte, who was basically this mobster from Mindanao who decided to make people's lives an absolute misery in those places by clamping down on drug addicts, which meant really clamping down on poor people, because rich people can be addicted to drugs. That's fine. Look at Elon Musk, everyone. Not for too long because he's really ugly, but it's
his eyes don't stay still.
Yeah, he's not all there. I think
it's going to be Trump's plan.
I think strangling his brain.
I think Trump's plan used to be to give the job, hand over the presidency to Ivanka.
Yeah,
but she's kind of distanced herself from him this presidency. So I think it must be Barron. I think he's going to hand it over to Barron because he's never going to give it to Eric. If he ever gets to the point that Eric is the only guy he can hand over the presidency to once he's a dictator,
he's not going to hand it over to anyone.
Then we know we can win, basically. But I think in his little head, I think that's what he's thinking.
No, he's going to keep it till the day he dies.
Monarchy,
and that's it.
Yeah, and then it's a monarchy.
Yeah. But there are some parallels here. If Duterte can be held responsible for what he's done, held accountable, can Trump, can Putin? Well, no, because they're not signatories to the they're not signatories to the International Criminal Court. So, but there's nothing to stop future governments rejoining or joining the ICC, and thereby putting someone like Trump, who will be wanted then for crimes against humanity, in the dock. So hopefully that's what will happen. It's what happened in Serbia with Slobodan Milosevic, who famously was an evil dictator of Serbia after the breakup of the Soviet Union and the breakup of Yugoslavia, and a guy responsible for the deaths of hundreds of thousands of Bosniaks and Kosovans. Really quite horrific stuff. So fingers crossed. You don't know what's going to happen in the future, but these people who are in charge of places, they will stay in charge. One of the reasons why the likes of Mugabe and Putin and etc., the reason why they stay on and never ever leave the presidency is because they know this is the sort of shit that happens if you step down.
They either die in a bloody civil war and revolution, or they get arrested.
Yeah. Or you can do it what Idi Amin did after murdering a bunch of people for being disabled. He lived out the rest of his life in Saudi Arabia in a palace. That was nice of the Saudi Arabians, wasn't it?
My dad did business with Idi Amin many years ago, until he killed one of his friends.
Wow, you need to elaborate on this story. Can you elaborate?
Yeah, my dad. Yeah, he's dead. My dad's well dead. So he sold tractors in Africa for years, and he and another colleague, and Dad used to do business in Uganda, Gambia. He was arrested in Nigeria once for a while, and then he did business with Idi Amin. We used to go to Stansted Airport when we were kids, and Dad would point out Idi Amin's plane landing. He wasn't supposed to be in the country at all, basically, but Dad knew he was landing in the UK.
Wow.
And then Dave, I think it was Dave, his mate, who was another salesman. He got killed he had a car accident, basically, but according to Dad, he was murdered, and then Dad stopped working over in Africa altogether.
Jesus, yeah. Idi Amin was a crazy bastard. He murdered hundreds, perhaps even thousands of disabled people by drowning them in Lake Victoria. Absolutely horrific.
But then, as you say, lived out his life in Saudi Arabia. He's hosting the peace talks between Russia and America and Ukraine at the moment.
Yeah, because they're all for the peace now. After they, murdered a journalist for saying nasty things about them. Ernie Byrne says Damien Thorne, Baron Trump. All I'm saying. Well, I think that Donald Trump is Damien Thorne. It's the same number of letters, isn't it? Same initials.
Yeah.
Same age.
There you go.
No, actually, Trump's a lot older than Damien would have been, was it? Because Damien was just a kid in the 70s, whereas Trump was a young man running around being racist. They used to call Amin Big Daddy, and everyone who didn't know him thought he was a big joke. Yeah, he wasn't. Really wasn't.
I can't even pronounce this name, but Fatumshuk says, what do you call an African tractor? A Massey Ferguson. My dad actually sold Massey Fergusons, and we've never had that joke about him. And now I'm going to use that at
we
Christmas.
could have used that joke. Oh, man.
It's just perfect. That's our new Christmas joke.
We're going to have to use something to resurrect your father for a minute, just to tell him that joke, and then you can go back to the afterlife. Yeah. What do you reckon? We can do it with some voodoo. I was in Nairobi, not Nairobi. What's the other one? Dar es Salaam in Tanzania. And I went to an Irish pub, because that's the sort of thing you do when you're in Dar es Salaam.
There's always an Irish pub everywhere.
There is always an Irish pub. And the bouncers were Maasai warriors dressed in full-on Maasai gear with the big earrings and everything.
Really?
Any ID?
Wow.
I was like, yeah.
The Maasai are the ones that wear that red and black tartan. Yeah?
Yes. Yeah.
And that was introduced to them by a Scotsman, as I understand it.
Possibly.
It's a colonial thing. It's not their traditional weave.
To the Scottish, and the original Scottish are now the Irish, and the original Welsh are now the French, and the French are now the British, and it's all over the shop. I do
lost
like the fact,
in some mythology.
I do like the fact that my country is called the land of the foreigners, because that's what the Angles were. They were foreigners who came over here. So it's like when people go, I don't like all these foreigners in the land of the foreigners. Yeah. It's not even the land of the foreigners anymore. You can't even call it the land of the foreigners because of all the foreigners.
Who were the Jutes? Where did the Jutes come from? Was that Germany?
They were Northern German as well.
Right. Okay.
Northern German, kind of around Jutland.
Jutland, of course, Jutland.
Which is now part of Denmark. And then you had the Anglos and the Saxons. Yeah,
we're all Germans, really.
Yeah. Basically, and that's why our language is kind of crazy. And then the Viking French came over. The Normans, they were the Viking French, the Northmen of.
Did you?
Our language.
Somebody mentioned Rob Words in the chat earlier, and I'd love Rob Words. It's one of my favorite shows. And he was talking the other day. He's got a show that's is English a Germanic language? Why is English a Germanic language? And the most interesting fact in there was that yes, it is a Germanic language, and it's on the same family tree as German. So German
is a Germanic language.
Is as German as English, right? Because
it's Latin,
because
it's Latin is Latin.
It's a totally English thing.
Romance,
we call Germany, and we call the German language German, but the Germans don't. It's Deutschland and Deutsch. That's what they speak.
And French call it Allemagne, and
so if we were
Spanish,
if we were accurately translating what the Germans call themselves, we would call them Dutch. And they would speak Dutch, and they would live in Dutchland.
Deutsch, not Dutch.
Yeah, but
Deutsch.
No. If we anglified it, if we did what we do.
Oh yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
But we call them Germans, and we're stuck. So the Germanic doesn't mean German. It doesn't. It's got nothing to do with German, basically, at all. Yeah. It's just a part of the Indo-European languages that end up with the same grammar and words and etc. And we're on the same family tree as German, and we're only about as German as the Germans.
Well, Jan is saying in the chat, technically it's Lower Germanic.
There you go.
There you go, mate.
Yeah.
Stick that in your piece hole.
Bloody Germans don't even speak German properly.
All these Germans coming over to Germany speaking German. It's not even German these days. You can't even call it German these days, or you get thrown in jail.
You get thrown in jail today saying "Hi Hitler." It's ridiculous.
Get thrown in jail for being a massive Nazi. I don't know.
Well, apparently you don't. You end up being a president of America, but that's fine.
Okay, so Duterte, and then Ukraine and Russia. We need to talk about this. So Saudi Arabia is currently hosting negotiations. Obviously, they're going on as we're doing this show, and What's on the table? Well, there's a 1 month ceasefire. Peacefire?
Ceasefire. Nice.
Ceasefire, not a peace. Peace talks for a ceasefire, which will, in a way, give the Russians more time to rearm, but also it'll give the Ukrainians time to rearm and readjust to not having American support. So I can see why they're going for it.
Mm.
Do you think the Russians are going to hold up their side of the bargain? Do you think they're going to go for it?
No, and I'm not even sure the Ukrainians will, to be honest with you. But the
Ukraine said yes. So far,
did you see the drone attack they staged on Moscow yesterday?
Yeah, that was good. That'll learn them. I'm a bit sad that a civilian got killed, but compared with how many civilians got killed in Ukraine over the weekend, it was it seemed a bit
so
more
it turns out that Ukraine, the country that built most of Russia's space rockets and ballistic missiles and nuclear missiles, is really good at making drones. Who knew? Yeah. Basically,
better than Iran.
Their future in the military-industrial complex of Europe is going to be the drone specialists of NATO. Really, and I think that's how wars are going to be fought in the future. I was watching some clips yesterday of Russian soldiers going into battle on horseback, and with donkeys carrying their gear, because they are running out of vehicles and their vehicles can't cope. This is almost awful, but being hit by Ukrainian drones, soldiers on horseback, having this incredibly 22nd century technology.
I feel really sorry for the horses. That's awful.
Yeah.
I kind of feel sorry for the people on top of the horses.
It's like World War One with robots.
Yeah.
And the Russians aren't clever enough to make robot horses.
Trench warfare.
I wouldn't mind if they're on robot horses. That'd be fine. The real horses being bombed by. And if you're a Ukrainian drone pilot, that must be a nightmare decision to make.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is all the fault of one person, Vladimir Putin. Who would stop this war. If he would pull his troops out of Ukraine, he would stop fighting. The war would be over. If Ukraine stopped fighting, no more Ukraine.
Can't be that easy, Graham. That sounds like a way forward for peace. That's ridiculous. What all Putin's got to do is stop. And Trump's his best friend, so Trump can just ring him.
His country. Yeah, he can say, "Sort it out, Vlad. I love you, Vlad."
Crazy. Who knew?
Yeah. But Kremlin has said, "Don't get too excited." The US, we don't know where it's going with anything because Trump is predictably unpredictable. Can we call him that? We know that he's going to do something fucking daft. We just don't know what it's going to be from one day to the next.
Which is the way I think he likes to keep things.
Yes, keep people guessing. It's his thing, isn't it? It's like the zoo format.
Well, and if you change, and if you change your mind 10 times in a day, then you're likely to be right on one of those things, basically. So. Yes.
Kind of.
So that's kind of how he works, isn't he? Because he goes, "Okay, I'm going to do tariffs," and then the stock market reacts, and he goes, "Okay, I'm not going to do tariffs." Yeah. That was big and brave of me. And you go, this is why I think what Carney was saying in particular, and this pushback, the idea that you did, the best way to deal with a bully is to be strong back. Yeah. Stand up for yourselves and have other people have your back. And it seems to me that's Starmer's job now to weave a place for us in, where we stand side by side with people like Carney and Merz in Germany, who's talking a good talk, basically, and Macron.
I'm glad in a way that it's taken us back into the arms of Europe and the Commonwealth.
Yeah.
We're going to have to stop relying on America. America's become an unreliable partner militarily and financially and in terms of trade. It's unreliable. You can't deal with a madman. You can't do a deal with someone to be dishonest because what's making them hold up their side of the deal?
Well, and again, I've seen videos of Ukrainian soldiers saying, surprise, surprise, all of a sudden Russia knows where all our bases are, where all our weapons are. They're dropping targeted bombs for once. For the first time in 2 years. Where are they getting that data? If it turns out Trump was handing them data, or giving them access to that data.
What will happen if that turns out to be the
nothing?
Case?
Nothing, mate. Nothing. Now, this is the problem, and you predicted this. And
the Democrats might wear pink socks.
Exactly.
That'll fucking show them.
And the thing is, there was a lot of pushback in the group, in Politics Social group, to you. Don't worry, the courts have got this. Don't worry, it's going to be fine. Don't worry, the Democrats will have a plan. And what you said was right. It's no, hang on. The court is on his side. Senate is on his side. Congress is on his side.
And the
for
Democrats are
for whatever
useless.
period of time that is, which is 2 years. There's nothing you can do about the Supreme Court. Biden had the opportunity to stick another couple of members on the Supreme Court.
Opportunity to arrest Trump. He had enough motive, to arrest. Not motive. What's it called? He had enough evidence to say we suspect that Trump has committed crimes of treason against the American state. He mounted an insurrection. He stole secret documents. He kept them in his toilet. He sold them to hostile foreign powers to have a look at.
But we don't want to upset truck drivers in Ohio, do we? Because,
he should have just bloody arrested him when he had the chance and stuck him away in Guantanamo Bay for the rest of his bloody life. In a box where he doesn't, no mobile phone, he doesn't get to go on Twitter, he doesn't get to tell people shit. We just do not hear from him. Maybe his lawyer can read out something that he says. But what would be funny if that happened, if he read it out verbatim, it would sound absolutely fucking insane. Because if you ever read a transcript of what Trump says, it's bonkers. Garbage. It doesn't make any sense at all. It's nonsense. Yeah. He starts off saying one thing and then he ends up by the end of what he's saying the absolute opposite of what he said at the beginning. I don't think he knows.
Genuinely just likes the sound of his own voice, basically.
He does. So we've got another story about Syria. Now, this is quite interesting. So in Syria, you've got a region in the north which borders with Iraq and with Turkey, where the wannabe separatist region of Kurdistan is. So in Iraq, the northern bit of Kurdistan, as we call it has its own flag. It's got its own capital in Erbil. It's got a few big cities up there. And they've been essentially autonomous since 1991, when they were given special protection by the international community after the First Gulf War. And that was because Saddam Hussein gassed the people up there. Like, it was a big war against, a big crime against humanity that he committed. And so they've been autonomous for a while. Then you've got the Kurds who live in sort of the south and the east of Turkey, and they have been oppressed for many, many years. You may have heard of the PKE, which is like a militant arm of the Kurdish group. And then you've got a Kurdish group in Syria. And this is when it gets really, really complicated, because they were assisting the rebels fighting against Assad, but then they were also fighting against ISIS, who were coming over. Now, ISIS was fundamentalist Shiite movement. So when they got there, they didn't want the Kurds at all. They've grown out of Iraq. They've grown out of Iraq, haven't it? So because Kurds
and the new leader of Syria was fighting for ISIS.
Yeah, but he was fighting against ISIS, but he was also fighting the separatists in the Kurdish and the people in Aleppo who weren't separatists. They just didn't want him to be leader. So the people who were
but wasn't he part of ISIL or something? He did. He went through the ISIS or Al Qaeda, didn't he? Sorry, he went through Al Qaeda, and it was ISIS that turned him away. Basically.
Yeah. So but anyway, so the new leadership in Syria has given the Kurds recognition, which is amazing. This is the biggest change in Syria really since the civil war began. This is a ceasefire that's been negotiated, and
absorb their troops into the Syrian army. Yeah. They've become a regiment of the Syrian army.
Yeah. And I think they're going to deal with it in the same way that we brought in the peace talks in Northern Ireland, where if you want to regard yourself as a Kurd, you can, and you're free to do that, and you're free to associate with other Kurds without, interference from the government. So hopefully this set the stage for the next few years. But this week as well, pro-Assad forces have been attacking the new government, and you're like, the guy ran away. It's not like there's an Zelensky who stayed in bloody Kyiv. He ran away to Russia.
But is that the what's this Alawite? These murders of Alawite people that was happening in Syria as well this week.
Oh, I don't know about that.
So the claim is that 830 civilians were killed in massacres targeting Alawites on the West Coast on Friday and Saturday of this week. And at the moment, I mean, the new president has said he's going to seek out who these people are, but they appear to be well-organized militia of some description, maybe even connected to the state. We don't know.
Yeah.
But to massacre 830 people over 3 days, where people were being dragged out of their homes and murdered in front of their children, whoever is doing that guy, I mean, he comes across really well in interviews, and I want to be fair. He seems like a guy that's transformed himself through learning, through some pretty shitty experiences, and through some weird beliefs that he had early on,
Yeah.
or some. And he seems like a peacemaker, basically. But that Syria is a nightmare to try and manage. I think, who'd want that job?
Yeah.
Because you're literally
Fascinating.
managing a bunch of terribly armed people. It's one of the things that I think my friend in Ukraine often talks about, that the problem is Ukraine had a kind of gangster culture, and now you've got a heavily armed gangster culture. So what happens when the war ends is going to be really interesting if they don't find the right partners. Basically.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very much like Russia. Russia has a revolution and becomes a fully armed gangster community and then country, basically.
Did you hear about Mark Kelly, the American senator?
I saw him pop up in my feed today.
So
having a spat with somebody, but tell me.
So he wrote he visited. This is a guy who was in the U.S. Navy. He flew missions in Iraq.
Yeah.
The first Gulf War. He's
twin of an astronaut as well.
Yeah, he's 15 years. He worked for NASA, going up into space in the space shuttle. And he wrote, "I just left Ukraine. What I saw proved to me that we can't give up on the Ukrainian people. Everyone wants this war to end, but any agreement has to protect Ukraine's security and can't be a giveaway to Putin," referring to the Russian president who ordered his military to invade Ukraine in February 2022. Musk, who owns Twitter, responded, "You
what did he call him,
a traitor."
Somebody has to do something about Musk.
I think someone will, mate. I think someone will. He's annoying enough people. Someone's just...
The man is...
I don't think he's long for this world.
It's just fucking evil. Arguably, I think he's a worse human being than Donald Trump. At least Donald Trump went through the pretense of an election and the politics of taking power in America, having to bully senators and whatever and a party into his own shape. Musk has just brought it, he's just paid for it. And then he gets to spout his Nazi South African racist crap around the world at people and start threatening heroes, war heroes, space heroes. The guy, he claims to be a bloody explorer of the universe and the galaxy and the savior for mankind. And it's disgusting, that guy, the way he treats people.
He's like one of those toxic feminists. Those men who fall over themselves to tell you how feminist they are. And then it turns out that they're sexual
misogynistic offender.
Yeah. He's a bit like that. He's like, I'm going to save the world, Messiah complex, all this kind of shit.
And
when it gets down,
he tried all that. I think with him it just boils down really simply to, he wanted to be loved. He wants to be liked, respected as a genius, or for this mythological genius that he's created for himself. And he wanted the left to do that. He did green stuff, he did solar panels, he did cars, etc. And then what it really boils down to is this business of, I'm going to make comedy legal again. And the problem was, it just wasn't funny. Nothing he ever said on the left was ever funny. And then he found people that were willing to laugh at him because he's rich and he said racist stuff.
Yeah.
And he went, "Oh, I'm going to do that then." It's as simple as that. I think he was brought up a racist in a racist house in a racist country.
Yeah,
of course. So it's all in his DNA. But
I get pissed off because it's when these fuckers come into my realm. Do you know what I mean? Like, as far as I'm concerned, right wingers in this country have ruined travel for people who want to travel and experience their continent. I love travel. I want people to travel. I love hearing people's stories about where they've been and things that have happened, and it's always fun and interesting. And they've ruined it for everyone. And they've done the same with comedy now. Like, comedy has been completely ruined by the right. Did you see the video? I think AIDS shared it about that dickhead in America, the bald guy. He looks like a cannibal. Yeah. What's his name?
I can't
Cop
remember.
Shite. He has a podcast. Joe Rogan. Rogan Joe. He's ruined comedy, and I was watching this video. He's like, he's absolutely right. He's not funny. He did a stand-up sketch, and I've seen like highlights of it or lowlights, I should say, and it's really not funny. I don't know if you watched.
No.
Did you watch Reindeer, Little Reindeer, whatever it's called?
Yeah.
Last year.
Baby Reindeer.
Baby Reindeer,
Yeah.
that's it. Do you remember he went at the beginning of the show? He was doing stand up in Edinburgh, and it was fucking awful. Like it was just painfully shite. That was the level of the stuff that
of Rogan stand-up
was doing when he was doing stand up. It just
that figures because he doesn't do comedy anymore, does he? He does.
I don't think he ever did. Did he?
Graham Hancock is a genius, basically, and please tell me about the mystical temples under the sea that you discovered from 12,000 years ago, and then he's dipped himself into politics.
I know, but
it's an easy audience to find. I think that's the thing, and we've often said we've got to work out a way to counteract this. We've got to work out a way to appeal to the same mindsets that easily buy into narratives like this.
Well, my nephew, who might be watching, if you are, hi Alan, he really likes AI, not AI, QI. You know the TV show with Stephen Fry, and now it's got
love it. Sandy Toksvig.
Sandy Toksvig. I mean, I like it. I find it very smug. I mean, 9 times out of 10, everyone on the panel is privately educated, so it does come across to me as a good scouser. Wind you up. Like I've just come to a dinner party, and literally everyone there is like substantially more posh than me.
Except for Alan Davis, who is just there to be the thick working class boy from Essex, basically.
Nope, he went to private school as well.
Oh, of course he did.
Because he's on the telly. That's how you know.
Of course he did.
How can you tell, Graham? He's on the fucking telly. He's privately educated as well. But there are episodes of it. At least, have I got news for you? Paul Merton went to a state school. So a lot of the time, there's 5 people on the show. 4 of them will be privately educated. And there'll just be him as representing the staties, which is, not great. But the reason why QI appeals to people is they learn stuff, and it's that thing of being able to go, well, you think this, but this is actually what's going on. And I think the same sort of mindset of people who like stuff like AI have also gone down, some of them, the rabbit hole of this dickhead, what's his name, Joe Rogan, because they're revealing actual truths about the world that
listen, I have to be absolutely honest,
media won't be allowed to tell you.
When I was 15, 16, I was dating somebody who would become my first wife, and her dad was a racist Labour voter, which is a fairly classic. No, being honest with you, in my generation, certainly that is a classic thing.
Yes. Okay.
One of the big things of the Labour Party was always that the Labour Party did a deal with the racists and misogynists to say, we'll give you an NHS and schools and railways and jobs for life and unions and all that recognition. Just stop doing the racist shit, basically, And that's what Reform have latched onto recently. But no, he was. And he read the Daily Mail and voted Labour. And the centre spread of the Daily Mail every time I went round there was almost always something like a version of a Graham Hancock book, like some stories from the Graham Hancock book or the Chariots of the Gods or whatever. It was all this mystic, the pyramids must have been built by frogs, that stuff. And I loved it. I lapped it up as a teenager. I genuinely thought it was great until I got the cognitive skills and the ability to look at a Graham Hancock book and go, oh, hang on. So the first chapter, he says, there must have been aliens 12,000 years ago. And the next chapter says, because we know that there were aliens 12,000 years ago. And then the next chapter is based on the fact that the spaceships had obviously landed in Egypt. And you just go, hang on, there isn't a single fact in this. The whole premise is based on what he said in the first sentence. And then he's just created the story. So I like to realize it's just entertainment. It's just entertainment. And that's what Rogan plays into,
Has anyone ever claimed that Stonehenge was built by aliens, or was that okay?
Of course it was built by aliens.
Built by white people, so it couldn't have
Well, they were built by white English people until there was an article this week that said that the majority of people living in Britain at the time Stonehenge was built were possibly black. Basically, which has suddenly caused absolute outrage around the English.
Which
I love.
A lot of those aliens did it theories are fundamentally racist, because they're essentially saying that if you were Mayan,
how could Africans,
or you were African,
Egyptians,
how could you possibly build something that?
Egyptian. It will be a big surprise to most people that Egyptians did not look like Elizabeth Taylor. They were black people. basically. And
But I mean, one of the things I don't think people just realize how old the pyramids are. What, when were they built? Like 3,500 BC,
6,000 years ago. Yeah,
6,000 years ago. So
yeah.
like
And
they had a lot
you
of
know,
time.
there's places like Göbekli Tepe in Turkey that were built 12,000 years ago with
Yeah,
amazing stonework.
yeah. They had a
And
lot of
people
time,
just,
a lot of people.
and it's racist and timist, because I think I read something recently about the fact that most people that haven't studied history and don't understand these things, because they just don't, like you say, lazy, not thick, basically, just haven't bothered to learn something, don't feel the need to. Most people's perspective of history is based on their lifetime and a bit of their parents.
Yeah.
They can kind of think back that far because it's within their relative experience. But if you say to them your great grandfather didn't know what an aeroplane was, they can't compute that. It doesn't make any sense to them at all, basically. And then if you say to them the pyramids were built 6,000 years ago, they just look at you sideways as if to say, don't be ridiculous. That can't have happened. Look at the technology we've got now. And you feel like turning around to them saying, I bet you couldn't build a fucking pyramid because you don't know what a ruler does, basically, in a protractor. You know, it's like, I often say, if you're a time traveler and you went back in time from now, you'd think you'd be so arrogant and elite, and you'd go back with this and you go, look at what I've got. And they go, what does it do? And I go, well, nothing, because there's no signal.
You can play Snake on it.
And then they say, how do you give it power? And you go, I don't know. I don't even know what electricity really is.
Well, Douglas Adams made a joke about this, wasn't it, when Arthur Dent got stuck on an alien planet, of a primitive culture on an alien planet, and he just ended up making sandwiches. He didn't know how to make a toaster. He didn't know how to make a microwave oven. He just set up a sandwich shop because all he knew how to do. And it's you know, considering how much technology shapes our lives, the fact that we don't know how it works. But also there's that thing of like the arrogance of it. You know, like I couldn't build the pyramid, so how could anyone else?
Yeah.
And I'm like,
and you go, well, somebody who ultimately owns an entire country and all the trading routes that's got, and has been in a royal family that's lasted for 400 years so far, and can command 9,000 slaves and feed and water them and house them around this tomb to myself.
They weren't slaves.
They can definitely do that.
They weren't slaves.
No, and you're right, they weren't. They didn't even need that. They had the excess in their economy not to have slaves. They paid them and housed them and paid them.
It was a 6 month on, 6 months off job. There's the farming that needed to be done in the Nile, the flood plains of the Nile, where they used to, had this really fertile soil. It meant they only had to work 6 months a year. For the rest of the time, nice hot country. You're not going to get cold. Come up, let's build some monuments. We'll fuck with people in the future. I like that attitude. Do you know what I mean? Like, they're going to look at this in 6,000 years' time, and they'll be like, "How the fuck did they do this?"
I went to Pompeii many years ago, and we had a tour guide walking us around Pompeii, and there's this bench with this beautiful carving, Roman lettering on the bench. And it was in the forum, and I said to the guide, what does this say? Is this something quite profound? And she said, it says, go to the butcher's round the corner for better meat. This was paid for by Albertus. And you go, oh, okay. He's just messing with our head 2,000 years later. It's an advert.
It's an advert. Yeah. Well, one of the things that they changed in Gladiator, first of all, the statues would have all been painted. So they wouldn't be in white.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And the other thing was advertising. So there'll be adverts going up. And like with sports people of today, gladiators were used to sell stuff.
Sponsored.
So they'll come out into the middle of the fucking Colosseum and say, before I slay this man or kill this lion or something, I think you should hop round to Jeff's round the corner.
Maximus Circus.
Quality cured meats.
Yeah, totally.
But it was just WWE. Ridiculous.
The Roman Empire, the Greek Empire, even probably the Egyptians, we don't know basically, but certainly the Romans and the Greeks that had a level of democracy about their systems. It's this cake and circuses thing, isn't it? Make sure they can eat, make sure they're entertained, and they will let you make money from them. Basically, that's the way it worked. They invented the whole thing. The Americans copied it, and now Trump is doing a Caesar on the whole thing. It's so repeatable.
It's all just a little case of history repeating. Andreas was telling the joke. I've heard this slightly differently, but why are the pyramids in Egypt? Because I heard the one about the British Museum couldn't fit them on the boat. But this is very, very true. I did a whole video last year. It might have been a year before now. When I went to Greece, I did a whole video in the Acropolis Museum. talking about the Parthenon and the Parthenon marble,
which is
why they
beautiful,
go
isn't it?
back to Greece, where they fucking well belong.
And again, that whole argument in the UK plays out as the Greeks are still not responsible enough to look after these things. And if you go to the British Museum to look at those carvings, it's all right. It's the British Museum. They look all right. It's a reasonably updated building, but it's no experience to go and see them. You go to the Parthenon Museum, right? It's the most beautiful building designed just to house these marbles that are not there.
Well, they have casts,
copies,
don't they? They have copies.
Yeah. And you go up this amazing spiral walkway, don't you, up to the top of this glass building that's just beautiful and prepared for. I mean, you think the Greeks have almost, I mean, maybe this is just English arrogance as well, but you feel like they are trying to build something to prove to us that they deserve their own shit back, basically. It's ridiculous.
What I found,
but there is currently talk, and I think maybe under this government it may happen, particularly because George Osborne is becoming a bit more left-wing than he ever was, basically, and he's the director of the museum, and he's talking about permanently loaning them back, which still feels arrogant, but yeah, makes sense.
I think we had law passed in the 1950s saying we couldn't give any of these back. But imagine if you know the stones on the Stonehenge that are horizontal on the top. They've got a special name, haven't they? Imagine if the Greeks had taken a couple of them and just gone, no, you can't have them back. No,
you can't be trusted.
You can't be trusted. With them.
You built a freaking motorway right next to it, basically.
Yeah. What the hell? Dickheads?
You don't realise there are tombs around here. Good God, man, we're going to have to annex.
It's infinite source of frustration that we don't give the Parthenon and the Benin bronzes and certain other things that we've robbed from other countries.
When we're kind of on this, I was watching a timeline YouTube video today about trade wars in history, and it dwelled quite a lot on Britain and France's role in the opium wars in China.
2 opium wars. We got a nice little Hong Kong out of that, didn't we?
Unbelievable what we did.
We burned down the Summer Palace in Beijing.
Not only did we introduce opium to the Chinese market, we then started bombing their ports so that they had to let us go and sell it, basically. Yeah. And it's because the Chinese were just insisting on us paying for things in silver. Yeah. You know, and this is what Trump is going to do this with crypto or something. Basically, he'll start bombing server farms in Canada because they're creating their own cryptocurrency or something. It's ridiculous. And this whole argument that these tariffs are about fentanyl or something. It's like nobody seems to know what Trump is even trying to achieve with these tariffs. He keeps saying America's going to get rich, and you think, well, how does it even work? If you put 300, he did a tweet yesterday that was saying that Canada is charging 390% tariffs on some farm goods. Can't even spell agricultural goods, so he wrote farm goods. And Canada is blatantly not. They have a trade agreement with America. It's all clear that Trump signed and wrote, supposedly, they are not charging 390% tariffs on anything. Agriculture, certainly. And the guy that I was watching this video with, he was just saying, well, I think Carney should just say, I'll tell you what, you drop your 25% tariffs on us and we'll drop the 390% tariffs that don't exist, basically. Just go with it and see what Trump does, because nobody seems to know what he's up to.
And he's threatening his neighbours, and now with the question of, like, you know, the ball is in Russia's court about this ceasefire. The Ukrainians have provisionally said yes to it, and you know, Trump needs to stand up to, you know, he needs to get on the phone to his busy mate who listens to him, who went through that awful period. Remember when poor old Vladimir Putin was accused of interfering in the American election? Oh, it was a terrible time for Vladimir Putin. He had a terrible time of it. Worse than the terrible time that the people of Bucha had to watch their children being raped by Russian soldiers before being massacred in front of their very fucking eyes. But, you know, he had a very bad time of it, Mike. Jesus Christ.
But this is what my friend's saying right now is Trump is going to have to. It's like a baby that genuinely just needs. You know, you can tell him not to put his hand in the fire. Don't put your hand in the fire. Don't lick the toaster. Don't do those things. And at some point in time, he's going to have to hurt himself in order to actually learn. And it feels to me like, you know, if you're thinking about it, he sucks up to these bullies. He treats Putin as an equal, and economically not an equal, militarily not an equal, resources-wise even not really an equal. It's just that he sees this hard man that he wants to suck up to. Yeah. And it strikes me as the kind of kid in the playground that would go, oh, yeah, you know, the hard gang. Yeah, I know them. Now I'm bestie mates with all of them,
yeah,
basically. What do you want? What do you want? And they say, oh, well, can you get me some drugs from them or something? You say, yeah, I can do that. And then he goes up and they say, who the fuck are you? And then cut a deal directly with you for the drugs. Putin he's sitting there chortling away at this.
Yeah.
And he's going to screw Trump over. He's going to pick his moment because he's want to get the biggest gain he can out of this, which is land. That's why these troops supposedly are running up to the front on horses, because they've all been given instructions to gain as much land as they possibly can, so that when the ceasefire hits, Putin can say, "Here's the line now." Basically,
So we've got over time a little bit, but I'll just run through a few more stories that you might not have heard about. Australia is going to get screwed over by Trump's tariffs as well, despite them. Trying to wiggle out of it. Australian steel and aluminium are going to get hit hard, and Trump insulted the former Aussie Prime Minister Turnbull for criticising him, and Australia's scrambling to negotiate a way out of the tariffs, but it's unlikely that to succeed. Colombia has called for the legalization of coca leaves, which I think this is remarkable, because Coca-Cola gets coca leaves from Colombia every year. Yeah. Masses, tons of them to put in their.
Didn't you say the other day the only company in the world that's able to import them?
That's not a pharmaceutical company or anything like that. The foreign minister of Colombia has called for it to be removed from the UN's dangerous narcotics list, and this would allow legal coca-based products like tea, medicine, and fertilizer. And apparently, he said cocaine is no worse than whiskey, which I disagree with, because whiskey doesn't make people conservatives, whereas cocaine.
Wow. Speaking of somebody that gave up whiskey 2 years ago, I think probably should be banned.
Yeah. Sierra Leone, the huge corruption scandal over there, because the immigration chief has been fired because he's hanging out with an immigrant. And the immigrant was a Dutch drug lord who had been hiding out in Sierra Leone for many years, a fugitive Johannes Leidekkers. And Sierra Leone's government might try to extradite a political dissident in exchange for sending this guy back to old, Dutchland. But yeah, the Dutch. There's two things I hate: people who are intolerant of other people's beliefs or whatever, and the Dutch. Right. Anyway, so thanks very much for watching. Is there anything else you got to say before we go? Was there anything that we missed?
No, I think we covered who built the pyramids and Sierra Leone's problems, and Imelda Marcos, and the fact that Idi Amin killed one of my dad's mates. Yeah, we're done.
Bloody hell! Got around the world, didn't we? Around the world in less than 80 minutes. Wow. We're doing well.
Amazing.
Okay, so I just want to say a big, huge thank you to everyone in the chat. Thanks for everyone who gave a super chat. Thanks for everyone for watching. I'll be back tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock with Morning Brew, so look out for that. And until then, I'll say a big thank you to my co-host, Mike Dix. And until next time, hello, good evening, welcome, and goodbye. Here's a like on the way out.